Thank you very much for joining this climate education program. My name is Hans-Jørgen Rasmussen and I'm the founder of World Climate School. Since early this year, World Climate School and SDGs Academy Pakistan have been working together to create this program. We have named it Climate Change, the Fight of Our Lives, from Emergency to Solutions. I will now explain why. Climate change is a huge threat to human existence, larger than anything humanity has ever experienced. We only have a small window of about 1 decade to turn the situation around globally. Everywhere on the planet, we need to do all we can to mitigate and adapt to the changes. The consequence is that we need to completely overhaul the way we live, eat, drink, etc. That enormous change is only possible if it becomes an overwhelming movement of change in every family, town, state, country and all around the world. The World Climate School team and a team of highly gifted teachers from SDGs Academy Pakistan have together invested their skills and their time to create the content of this course. We believe it has the capacity to become a real game changer in the battle against climate change disaster in Pakistan. The structure of the course is a mix of 2-hour online seminars via Zoom and a set of ready-made video modules, this one being the first. The online seminars will be once a week, and these video modules will also be accessible on a weekly basis, and you'll be expected to view them before the next Zoom seminar. Parallel to the course, you will also get access to a lot of inspiring teaching material and tools. Among others, the slideshows and videos used in this course, so that you can make them part of your own teacher's toolbox, either without changing them or by editing them to fit your preferences even better. So, the rhythm of this course will be Zoom seminar, watching pre-recorded video lectures, and again some Zoom seminar, and so on. In addition, you'll be challenged with extra homework from time to time during the period of the course. The exact dates and schedules for the course will be announced during the first online seminar. In this module, we will first introduce you to World Climate School, and after that give you an overview about climate change. What are the challenges? What are the solutions? And why are you important in this? During the next modules, we will go much deeper into these topics and much more. The goal of this course is to equip you with the knowledge and the skills you need to understand this in depth and also to be able to educate others. Now, get to know World Climate School and our model called Teach the Teachers. You will now get to know what World Climate School is and why you should get involved. My name is Hans-Jørgen Rasmussen. I'm the founder of World Climate School and I'm also a retired psychologist with many years of teaching behind me. I started learning about climate change around 2010, and as soon as I understood the dramatic consequences of it, I started teaching others along with my own learning process. I also started designing my own websites about this. Images and videos can be much more motivating than words, so my websites are to a very high degree built to inspire through videos and visual communication in general. I will introduce you to these websites towards the end of this lecture. For a long time, World Climate School was my own personal one-man project. That is no longer the case. I'm happy to announce that World Climate School is now run by an international core team, and we are working closely with allies and partners in local chapters worldwide. As you see here, we have established local projects in some of the most vulnerable parts of the world, Asia and Africa, with Pakistan as the most active and energetic project. The first international chapter was established in Turkey, where I spent a large part of the year. A group of climate-passionate students and their teacher started this, and they created the logo and invented the brand World Climate School and handed it over to me, wanting me to make it go viral. They also created a World Climate School program in Turkish language and started teaching students in other schools in their own area. But it is obvious that the countries most vulnerable are not the countries that contributed most to greenhouse gas emissions. On this map, darker color means higher emissions per capita. So it's clear that in order to fight climate change, the wealthy countries with high carbon footprint will have to get involved. And that is why we want to establish World Climate School chapters all over the planet, also in the wealthy countries. Being a climate warrior is basically a question of passion, about what turns you on and what you burn for. The passion is needed to keep you going over time. My passions used to be art, especially photography and classical music. But that changed dramatically. Now it's the next generations, here represented by two of the youngest members of my family, Thea and William. Some people think it's about saving the planet. Nope, I don't think so. The planet will take care of itself. But it's definitely a question of saving our civilization, saving the planet as a viable place for humanity. And for us humans, I'm convinced that it is our continued existence that's at stake here. And strangely enough, the majority of people on the planet don't know this. Most people think that the danger is far away in time and space and that we have lots of time to find solutions. But that's not the truth. We only have very few years to reverse the current trends. We have to act now. Have you heard about Greta Thunberg? I believe you have. But just to be sure, I will introduce you to her. She is the most influential person on the planet in 2019. In August 2018, then 15 years old, she sat in front of the Swedish parliament every school day for 3 weeks to protest against the lack of action on the climate crisis. She posted what she was doing on Instagram and Twitter, and it soon went viral. On September 8th, Greta decided to continue striking every Friday until the Swedish policies provided a safe pathway well under 2 degrees Celsius in accordance with the Paris Agreement. So now we will have a closer look at who she was and what she did and what she accomplished and why it's important. she's leading by example. She's not only telling us the truth, she is also living her truth. She does everything she can to keep down her personal carbon footprint. She doesn't fly. She doesn't drive a car running on petrol or diesel, and she doesn't eat meat. When she was going to America, to participate in the United Nations Climate Summit, she crossed the Atlantic by sailboat, both ways. She was given access to speak to world leaders at the United Nations Climate Action Summit, and she held a speech which was very clear, very direct, and very emotional. We will now first listen to her speech, and afterwards we will take a look at a video showing how her work is being summarized in the year's project.
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. To have a 67% chance of staying below a 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise, the best odds given by the IPCC, the world had 420 gigatons of CO2 left to emit back on January 1st, 2018. Today, that figure is already down to less than 350 gigatons. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? With today's emissions levels, that remaining CO2 budget will be entirely gone within less than 8.5 years. There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with these figures here today, because these numbers are too uncomfortable and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us. But the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say, we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line. The world is waking up, and change is coming whether you like it or not. Thank you.
Some people say that we should be in school instead. But why should we be studying for a future that soon will be no more, and when no one is doing anything whatsoever to save that future?
Climate change is an existential threat and the most important issue of all. There are no grey areas when it comes to survival. Either we go on as a civilization or we don't.
You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done, rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis.
One of Greta Thunberg's core messages is that our house is on fire and that we should act accordingly. She created the movement called Fridays for Future. I believe you have all heard about it, or maybe you're even part of it. School children all over the planet striking for every Friday for the climate. For example, on March 15th, 2019, School strikes urging adults to take responsibility and stop climate change began taking place in over 2,000 cities worldwide. An estimated number of 1.4 million pupils from around the world participated in these events. In later global strikes, numbers have been rising, and the children do not stop. Change is coming, whether the adults want it or not. And I think this message says it all. We are all needed in this. Everyone counts. The older generations were inspired by Greta and Fridays for Future, with Extinction Rebellion as the result. Grown-ups taking to the streets, using non-violent civil disobedience in order to get attention to the fact that our continued existence as a species is at stake here. Many people volunteer to be arrested for this cause. This also goes for many celebrities, here with Jane Fonda as an example. She moved to Washington, D.C. in order to participate in Friday for Future's demonstrations. And several other famous actors and celebrities are following her example. Media people and leaders from all parts of the world step forward with dire warnings. Here, Sir David Attenborough. And here, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Greta says that our house is on fire. The wildfires in Australia were a clear confirmation of this, and recently fires in Siberia underlined it once more. Earlier this year, Greta held a speech for World Economic Forum, challenging world business leaders to take leadership in the battle against climate change. And they listened to her. Maybe this was the most important message from Greta to World Economic Forum. Richer countries need to get down to zero emissions much faster and then help poorer countries do the same. She was heard and taken seriously, as opposed to the childish and extremely dangerous person on her right-hand side. So you, my friend, you are important. You can make a difference, and the world needs you. Greta Thunberg, Fridays for Future and the Extinction Rebellion, and other upcoming protest movements are, in my mind, the best reasons for hope we have. They have managed to mobilize where the rest of the Greens have failed. And they stay on track because they know that it's now or never. Every child, every young one, every father and mother, not to mention grandparents and great-grandparents, ought to join them, and I believe they will after a while. The only question is whether we manage to do this in time. The planet has no patience with us. Therefore, we must help, and education is for me the best way to do that. We need a rapid global awareness raising, a global enlightenment, and that's where the climate school comes in. Most of this has already been said. I just want to emphasize that it might seem as if the world has forgotten climate change because of COVID-19. But we will soon find out that compared to climate change, Corona will seem like a minor incident. Then you can ask, why choose World Climate School for education? My emphasis here is that we talk to both heads, hearts and gut feelings. We show the reality of the threats of climate change, but we also focus on hope and positive climate action. We create passionate climate warriors. Just to show you the teacher's model, we say throwing a snowball, creating an avalanche. If one person can teach 20, then 20 can teach 400, 400 can teach 8,000, 8,000 can teach 160,000, and so on. So after only 8 steps, we have reached everybody on this planet. Of course, I know that this is a kind of pyramid game and it may not work so fast, but even if the growth rate is only 1 to 5, we will get there quite quickly. Our mission statement speaks for itself. Inspiring, energizing, enabling, creating teamwork to save our civilization, putting pressure on world leaders to make climate change their number 1 priority, using education as a tool for mobilization. And we have some powerful tools in our websites, and I will go through them now one by one. The Climate Cinema is a collection of more than 400 videos related to climate challenges and possible solutions. ClimateChange.site is a solid science-based knowledge website, visually enhanced to increase motivation. And finally, World Climate School has its own community website. This is meant for communication, collaboration across borders, sharing insights and teaching material, mutual inspiration, and continued learning. We like to see it as our Facebook group for World Climate School members. Now you know the basics of World Climate School and the teacher's model. It should also be clear to you that we need everybody on board and that you will make a huge difference, co-creating our common future. Now we will give you an overview. Climate change, what are the challenges and what are the solutions?
Why is the Earth not a cold, dead rock floating in space? The reason is that it is enveloped by this tiny, tiny, thin layer of gases and chemicals that we call our atmosphere. So the sun's energy, rather than just coming down and bouncing right back off, it comes down and is held close to the surface of the Earth for a while and then bounces off. And that simple process is why we have evaporation and precipitation and photosynthesis and life on our planet. So scientists discovered well over 100 years ago that the atmosphere and the systems on the Earth are in this dynamic relationship, and you can change the chemical composition of the atmosphere and hold more of the sun's energy for longer. The energy still has to escape, of course, but in the meantime it will cause changes in these biophysical systems of the Earth. And you often hear people say the Earth has always changed, the climate has always changed, and that's true, it has. This relationship between the atmosphere and the systems, they go through cycles, but these cycles have typically taken hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. The key thing to know first is that for the last 10,000 years on Earth, the climate has been relatively stable, unusually stable. And by stable, I mean temperature has varied, it's gone up and down, but it's stayed in a fairly narrow band of about plus or minus 1 degree Celsius. And all of advanced human civilization has taken place during this 10,000 years. The development of agriculture, the written word, the wheel, the iPhone, everything we know, everything we have built, we have done in this period of relative climate stability. So what we've been doing for the last couple of hundred years is digging up carbon out of the earth and throwing it up into the atmosphere and changing the chemical composition of the atmosphere, like has happened in the past, except for way, 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 way faster. In geological time, the blink of an eye, we are substantially changing the chemical composition of the atmosphere, and all of climate science has been about what's going to happen, what is the Earth going to do in response to this. And so we've already seen that the process is underway. We have measured, we have witnessed, observed with our eyes and our thermometers about a 0.8 degree Celsius rise in global average temperature since before the industrial age, since before we started digging all this carbon up. And this may not seem like a lot, less than 1 degree Celsius, but the thing to know about it is these greenhouse gases we throw up stay in the atmosphere for a very long time. There are very long time lags involved here. So this 0.8 degree temperature rise is a response to what we were doing 50 to 100 years ago. And what we see in the first half of this century will be a response to what we've done the last 50 years. And what we see in the latter half of this century will be a response to decisions we make today. So the question is, temperature is rising. How high does it have to rise before we need to worry, before we're in danger, before bad things start happening? The typical answer to this question has been 2 degrees Celsius. So obviously, what counts as not dangerous versus dangerous is not a hard scientific question. It's a political question, and this was a political decision to take this 2C number, mainly made by European climate negotiators well over 10 years ago. And it's just sort of stuck since then. All the countries involved in climate negotiations have basically signed on saying, yes, this is what we want to avoid, 2 degrees centigrade temperature rise. The bad news on this 2C number is twofold. First of all the latest science done in the last 10 to 15 years has pointed to the conclusion that those impacts we thought were going to happen around 2 degrees centigrade are in fact going to happen much earlier than that. The climate is more sensitive to this added greenhouse gases than we thought. So if those were the impacts we were worried about, then the real threshold of safety ought to be something like 1.5 degrees centigrade. James Hansen is the climate scientist most famously known for raising these warnings, but it's a growing scientific consensus that 2 degrees is in fact dangerously high, which is bad because we are almost certainly going to blow past 2 degrees Celsius. There's some reason to believe, a recent study said that even if we stopped our climate emissions tomorrow, we're still going to get more than 3 degrees this century just from momentum from the previous emissions. But stopping at 2 degrees now would take a level of global coordination and ambition that is nowhere in evidence. So a lot of climate scientists don't really want to tell you this because they don't want to depress you, but I'm just a blogger, so I'm happy to depress you. 2 degrees Celsius is probably off the table. So then the question becomes, well, what does it look like if temperature goes higher than that? What would, say, 4 degrees Celsius look like? Oddly, there hadn't really been a lot of concerted scientific attention to that question because climate scientists honestly thought we wouldn't do that to ourselves. But we are doing it to ourselves. So in 2009, several climate change research groups in England drew together a group of scientists, commissioned some papers, and had them really take a hard look for the first time. What would 4 degrees Celsius look like? There were a lot of papers, a lot of equations, a lot of talk and complexity. I have helpfully paraphrased it here for you to make it easier to grasp. 4 degrees Celsius temperature rise would look ugly. Among other things, that would be the hottest the Earth has been in 30 million years. Sea levels would rise at least 3 to 6 feet, and this excludes some really tail end possibilities, but 3 to 6 feet at least. And persistent drought would cover about 40% of the currently occupied land on Earth, which would wreak havoc on agriculture in East Asia, in Africa, South America, Western US. All this combined would produce hundreds of millions of people who had been driven from their homes, either by their cities being swamped by sea level rise, or by hunger, or by all the attendant ills that come along with those things. And to boot, probably somewhere around half of the known species on Earth would go extinct. According to a recent paper by the International Energy Agency, we are currently on track, if we keep doing what we're now doing, if we go on with business as usual, as it's called, we are now on track for 6 degrees Celsius temperature rise this century. Something, 5 to 7. These are obviously estimations. So if 4 degrees is hell on Earth, I'll let your imaginations fill in the blanks on 6 degrees. But one danger that comes up when we contemplate going this high with our temperature is the possibility that climate change will become irreversible. I think when people typically think about climate change, they think, oh, temperature is going to rise X amount, circumstances will change, some places will get warmer, some places will get wetter, we'll adjust, we'll move our farms around, people will migrate from one city to another, we'll get resettled, and we'll go on with life. The really dangerous possibility is that what are called, the Earth has several of what are called positive feedback systems. So for instance, in Siberia, there's this permanent ice, the permafrost, and it contains a bunch of methane in it. As it melts, it releases that methane. The methane causes more warming, which melts more ice, which releases more methane. It's a self-sustaining process. Or sea ice melts. Ice is white, it reflects energy. When it melts, it becomes dark blue and absorbs more energy, which heats the oceans, which melts more ice, which creates more dark surfaces. You see, there's a number of these systems that are self-perpetuating. And the great danger of climate change that towers above all these other more specific dangers is that these positive feedback systems will take on a momentum of their own that becomes unstoppable. And human beings will lose any ability to control it at all, even if we stop all our climate emissions on a dime. Will that happen at 2 degrees? Probably not, though there's a real chance of it, and there's a lot of debate about that. Will it happen at 4 degrees? Well, it looks a lot more likely at 4 degrees. Will it happen at 6 degrees? Almost certainly. So if we continue on our present course, climate change will probably take on a life of its own, spiral out of control, and according to a recent paper, by 2300 we could see temperature rise of up to 12 degrees centigrade. Now if that happened, something like half the Earth's currently inhabited land would become too hot to survive on. And when I say too hot to survive on, I don't mean it's difficult to grow beans or air conditioning bills are inconveniently high. I mean, if you go outside, you die of hotness. I mean, places that were an average of 80 degrees Fahrenheit will now be an average of 170, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Literally too hot for human beings to go outside and survive. So, will there still be human civilization under those circumstances? who knows? I mean, maybe we'll live in underground climate-controlled caves, maybe we'll grow food in test tubes, but that wouldn't look anything like Earth as we now know it. It would look a lot more like Newt Gingrich's moon colony, assuming any human beings, or at least enough to make a civilization, survived in those circumstances. So this is what I mean by climate change being simple. There are many complicated and fascinating discussions to be had about what to do about it, or about what effect our actions might have on the climate and when, or which policies are best based on cost-benefit analysis. There's complexity, plenty of complexity for those of you who like complexity. But we now know to a fair degree of certainty that if we keep doing what we're now doing, we will face unthinkable catastrophe. That's the bumper sticker, that's the take-home message. And that, saying I don't want to talk about that because I don't know the ins and outs is like saying I don't want to raise alarms about Hitler's army being 100 miles out because I don't know the thread count of their uniforms, or I don't know the average calorie intake of a German soldier. You don't need to know those things to be scared that the army's on the march and to raise alarms about it. Similarly, if we keep doing what we're now doing, we are screwed. This we know now. To stabilize temperature, and I don't mean stabilize temperature at 2 degrees or 4 degrees or 6 degrees, I mean to ever have a hope of ever again having a stable temperature of any kind, global climate change emissions need to peak, stop growing, peak, and start falling rapidly in the next 5 to 10 years. Every year we do not get started on this, we add, according to the International Energy Agency, an extra $500 billion with a B dollars to the price tag of what it's going to cost us to do this eventually. Every year we wait, that's $500 billion down the drain. Now, you and I look around at current politics, particularly US politics, and massive, coordinated, intelligent, ambitious action does not strike us as particularly plausible. In fact, it might strike us as impossible, but that is where we are, stuck between the impossible and the unthinkable. So your job, anyone who hears this, for the rest of your life, your job is to make the impossible possible.
I hope you liked the video Climate Change is Simple. You might want to pause this lecture here and just think about these questions for a couple of minutes and write down your answers so you don't forget them. When you're ready, continue the lecture. After listening to David Roberts, I believe it's obvious that we do have a global climate emergency. However, there are some good news. Our faith leaders are waking up, urging their followers to act on climate change, starting with Pope Francis' encyclica, and other faith leaders were soon following. And everybody seems to know that we need to abandon fossil fuels. In order to fix this, we need a very deep transition. Almost everything needs to change. Our lifestyle, our consumption patterns, our eating habits, our economic systems, and much more. Deep down, we need to switch to a completely different set of values and behaviors. And those of us who sense that also sense that this will be very difficult. But the consequences of continuing business as usual are terrifying, and therefore we need to make these changes starting now. Our political leaders have been discussing climate change for a long time, but what has come out of it? Most of our political leaders seem to be short-sighted and narrow-minded, only caring about the immediate future for themselves and their voters. Not the long perspective and not the perspective of the planet as a whole. Therefore, years of negotiations have been futile, and this famous quote from Greta Thunberg nails it. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? One can ask, do people know? I believe many do, but most people have not understood the urgency. Or they feel powerless, hoping or believing that someone else will solve this for them. Therefore, education is needed in order to create general awakening, putting pressure on elected leaders to make the right decisions. And we all need to be part of this, because Robert Swan is speaking the truth here. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Hello again. Now, as you see, in the meantime, I have moved out to this very beautiful beach, and I'm not alone, and I took you here because here is someone I want you to meet.
Fun fact, planet Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Mankind, about 140,000 years old. Let me put that in perspective. If you condense the Earth's lifespan into 24 hours, that's one full day, then we have been here on this planet for, drum roll please, 3 seconds. 3 seconds. And look what we've done. We have modestly named ourselves Homo sapiens, meaning wise man. But is man really so wise? Smart, yes, and it's good to be smart, but not too smart for your own good. Yes, we have split the atom. Yes, we build clever machines that navigate the universe in search of new homes, but at the same time, those atoms we split created nuclear warfare. In our quest to explore the galaxy, rejects and neglects the home that we have here now, so no, that cannot be wisdom. Wisdom is different. While intelligence speaks, wisdom listens, and we willingly covered our ears to Mother Nature's screams and closed our eyes to all of her help-wanted signs. Wisdom knows that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, so if we were wise, we would not be shocked when we see storms that are stronger than ever before, or more drought, hurricanes, and wildfire than ever before, because there's more pollution than ever before, more carbon, more trees cut down than ever before. At a record pace, we have increased the extinction of animals by 1,000 times the normal rate. What a feat. In the next 10 to 100 years, every beloved animal character in every children's book is predicted to go extinct. Lions gone, rhinos gone, tiger, gorilla, elephant, polar bear gone. In 3 seconds. Species that have been here longer than us will be gone because of us. In this 3 seconds. In an existence shorter than a Vine video, we turn the circle of life into our own personal conveyor belt. Somebody, anybody help. We were given so much, the only planet in this solar system with life. I mean, we are 1 in a million. No, actually, scientifically, we are 1 in a billion, trillion. That's a 1 followed by 33 zeros. And I don't want to get too spiritual, but how are we not a miracle? We are perfectly positioned to the sun so we don't burn, but not too distant so we don't turn to ice. Goldilocks said it best, we are just right. This paradise where we are given medicine from trees, not coincidentally, but because like the song says, we are family. Literally, everything, every species is connected genetically, from the sunflower to the sunfish. And this is what we must recognize before it's too late, because the real crisis is not global warming, environmental destruction, or animal agriculture. It is us. These problems are symptoms of us, byproducts of us. Our inner reflection, loss of connection has created this misdirection. We have forgotten that everything contributes to the perfection of Mother Nature. Corporations keep us unaware and disconnected, but they have underestimated our strength. Contrary to popular belief, millions are waking up out of their sleep, seeing our home being taken right up under our feet. We cannot allow our history to be written by the wicked, greedy, and loony. It is our duty to protect Mother Nature from those who refuse to see her beauty. Call me crazy, but I believe we should have the right to eat food that's safe, with ingredients we can pronounce. Drink water that is clean, marvel at trees, breathe air free of toxins. These are natural rights, not things that can be bargained for in Congress. See, they want you to feel powerless, but it has been said that something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wing can cause a typhoon halfway around the world. But when enough people come together, we too will make waves and wash the world into a new era filled with love and connection, freedom for all without oppression. But it is up to you, yes, you watching this behind this screen, to make the effort, because time is of the essence, and only together can we make it to the 4th second.
Some people think climate change is something far away in time and space. Let's take a look at how it impacts us here and now. Meet climate scientist James Hansen, one of the world's leading climate scientists. A very short version of his biography is on the image here. After his retirement, he has often been seen like this, because he quit his job and became a full-time climate activist. He did not want his grandchildren to ask him, "Grandpa, you knew about all this, why did you not do anything?" I was lucky enough to meet him at COP21 in Paris and followed him through a couple of days. What he said has had a profound impact on my work. His main focus was on ice melting, Antarctica, Greenland, North Pole, glaciers all over the world. He issued a dire warning. If we do not get out of fossil fuels rapidly, we will have a multi-meter sea level rise, much higher than earlier models have predicted. And we need to include nuclear power in order to succeed in this rapid transition. So according to James Hansen, this scenario cannot be ruled out, with dire consequences for all coastal cities. We already see the consequences of sea level rise in low-lying island communities. Another consequence of climate change we see already now is drought. Here, from a couple of years ago, a severe drought hit California. It varies in strength from year to year, but never seems to disappear completely. And the aquifers are drying up. The Syrian conflict started as a consequence of severe drought. Lack of water causing 1.5 million people to migrate from the countryside into cities, exacerbating poverty and social unrest. Therefore, Syrian refugees are in reality climate refugees. But water scarcity is constituting a looming threat in large parts of the world. In 2019, Cape Town almost ran out of water. This image speaks for itself. People lining up for water being more and more restricted over time, with the options rapidly narrowing down. In some parts of the planet, food scarcity is already a reality. And with limited access to clean water, needed both for drinking and for irrigation, then we may face an impossible choice: death by starvation or by dehydration. We have witnessed massive increases in wildfires in California, in Australia, in Siberia. We have also witnessed extreme weather events coming much more frequently and with more power all over the world. Our oceans are being acidified and at the same time filled up with trash. We have been witnessing a serious biodiversity crisis. Species are going extinct at a scary rate, and our lifestyle and climate change seem to be the main cause. So, I wonder, who will be the next to go? Will it be us? And what can we do to avoid it? Now I want to challenge you with an assignment. This is Fenway Park Stadium in Boston. And this is your assignment, step by step. Imagine a pipette releasing a magical drop into the stadium at 12 o'clock. The droplet has the property that it's doubling in size every minute. After about 6 minutes, it fills a thimble. Now, the first question to you is, when is the stadium full of water? The second is, when is the stadium 7% full? And the third question, imagine that you are sitting linked to a chair on the top row. When do you realize that there is danger ahead? Write down your answer to these 3 questions, and if you need time to think, pause the video. Now I trust you've written down your answers and are ready to face the facts. The answer to question 1, 12:49. The answer to question 2, 12:45. The answer to question 3, much too late. And when it comes to climate, we are at 12:45. 48. Note that if you were far from the correct answers, don't worry. Most people are. So, are we smart or stupid? Obviously, not smart enough to see dangers ahead soon enough. But does that mean that we are stupid? I prefer to see it differently. It's not that our brains are dysfunctional. We just don't know enough. So we need to get educated. Politicians always talk about growth. And exponential growth looks very innocent in the beginning, but after a while it becomes dangerous. A typical example is population growth. It's worth noticing that since 1950, global population has grown from around 3 billion to 7.8 billion, and therefore it's no wonder that feeding the world's population is becoming increasingly difficult. Then what is the most important thing you can do about climate change? Katherine Hayhoe, one of the world's leading climate scientists, has a very simple message as a response to that question. She says the most important thing you can do to fight climate change is talk about it. In order to be able to talk about it in a qualified way, we need knowledge. And as you learn more, start sharing your knowledge with others, and that means learning and teaching at the same time. Politicians do what they think their voters want. So as a voter, demand from the candidate you are voting for that they make the battle against climate change their top priority, and if not, change the way you vote. Greta Thunberg speaks out with capital letters and calls eternal economic growth a fairy tale, and you can do that too. Margaret Klein Salomon is one of my primary sources of inspiration in the climate battle. Like me, she's a psychologist. I discovered her blog in 2014, connected with her, and she has been inspiring me ever since. Let me read her bio for you. Margaret Klein Salomon, PhD, calls herself the climate psychologist. She's trained in clinical psychology and worked as a therapist until 2014, when she left her practice to found the organization called the Climate Mobilization, an organization dedicated to initiating a transformation of the economy, of politics and society to respond to the climate emergency. As part of her work, she encourages people to talk openly and honestly with their loved ones about the terror and existential dread about how drastically the world is likely to change in the coming years, and then to help them take action. The title of her latest book is Facing the Climate Emergency, How to Transform Yourself with Climate Truth, a self-help guide to living with the reality of climate change. It is highly recommended. Normally I would not like to read the content of a slide, but I consider this the text of this one so important that I will make an exception. Margaret challenges all of us to become heroes, and she adds, "It's not going to be easy. It's going to be the opposite of easy. But acknowledging the truth of our climate and emergency and ecological emergency, grieving the past and the future that has been lost, and taking the heroic path of the climate warrior will make you confident and strong. It will give you a mission and purpose beyond anything you have ever experienced before. It will allow you to, at long last, heal your pain and feel genuinely good about yourself. It will connect you to your fellow humans. It will connect you to all life. It will give you real, meaningful hope because it's based on your real and incredible potential to affect change. Most importantly, it will help give humanity a better chance of canceling the apocalypse and protecting itself and the living world." We definitely need a rapid global mobilization for climate change. Franklin D. Roosevelt's mobilization of the American people during the Second World War was a fine example to be followed. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, he held a flaming speech to the American people. First of all, this had the consequence that the United States entered the war. In addition, the industry, especially the car industry, rapidly changed their production lines from peacetime to wartime production, meaning production of fighter planes, tanks, cannons, etc. Pearl Harbor was their wake-up call. We are in a similar situation. We need a global mobilization of the same magnitude. We already had our wake-up call. We need to follow it. So, we need to get off fossil fuels fast. As you see, the greenhouse gas emissions come from a variety of economic sectors, mainly electricity and heat production, agriculture, forestry and other land use, industry and transportation. And for some, it may be a surprise that agriculture and land use has a larger share of this than transportation. That is a challenge for our eating habits, as we soon shall see. Do you remember James Hansen talking about a rapid transition to clean energy in order to avoid runaway melting of ice sheets in Antarctica and Greenland? He also said that this goal cannot be reached via renewables alone. We have to include nuclear energy produced with the latest technologies based on thorium and molten salt. If we don't do that, we will have to reduce our energy use dramatically. Animal agriculture, especially production of beef, is guilty on 2 points. The environmental impact of meat versus vegetables is staggering. The exact figures may vary a little, but I believe this shows some clear trends. A serving size of meat compared to a serving size of vegetables is linked to 20 times more greenhouse gas emissions, and it also takes 100 times the amount of land as consuming vegetables. And then I have not even mentioned the huge differences when it comes to water use in the production process. Therefore, we should all eat much less meat and dairy products starting now. It may not be easy, but we have to. Many of our transport options are depending on using fossil fuels. Look for alternative transportation, walking, cycling, using trains or trams or other public transport. Where this isn't possible, carpool or share your journeys. Electric or hybrid vehicles are better choices for the environment than petrol-powered vehicles, especially if the electricity powering them is produced in a non-CO2 emitting process. Smaller cars are better choices than SUVs, particularly when you drive alone. Yeah, and less car driving does have some health benefits. And if you feel bad because you're not able to reduce enough, you can offset your carbon footprint by paying for tree planting to organizations that handle this kind of transactions. And reducing our home energy use is something we all can get better at. The demand for eternal growth embedded in our capitalistic system has transformed many of us to mainly being consumers, with a seemingly endless need for the latest version of anything. The result is destructive use and discard behavior. And since most things are no longer produced to last, the system supports this behavior. But we are over-exploiting the planet, so this needs to stop. We need a totally new and radically different value system, not focused on having, owning, but on alternatives like sharing and caring. And the old values of reducing, reusing, recycling, and repairing coming to life again. Summarizing what you can do as an individual, these words will be in focus. Learning and teaching, reducing, reusing, recycling, repairing, home energy efficiency, climate-friendly transport, less meat and more veggies, and plant trees to compensate for your emissions. As a member of your community, you should share knowledge, you should start sharing things, you should start carpooling, you should grow food locally, and you should support local farms and markets. You can ask why you should do this. Well, first of all, it will prepare you for a future with less access to cheap energy. It will build a sense of community and belonging. And it will develop more local self-sufficiency and resilience. As a citizen of a democratic country and member of the global community, you should do whatever possible to influence policy makers to do what's right. You should demand that the party and the politicians you vote for put fighting climate change on top of the agenda. And you should join climate active groups and organizations and contribute with your skills. You may ask, what's in it for me? The list of benefits is long. Being connected in these ways brings you joy, fun, inspiration, a feeling of belonging, and a deep feeling of meaningfulness. And good reasons to get up in the morning and follow your passion together with like-minded people from all over the world. Believe me, I know. That's how it is for me and all my fellow climate warriors. Now we have reached the end of Module 1, and I hope you have enjoyed it. And I also hope you become inspired to learn and do more. Before next module, we want you to follow the instructions in the description below the video. Most often these instructions will contain mandatory homework, links to interesting videos, links to important websites, recommendations from our team, and much more. And just so that it's clear, your home assignment this week will be to get to know our two main websites, the Climate Cinema and the climatechange.site. You see them here on the screen, but they will also be in the description below the video. So now thank you for your attention and patience today. I wish you all the best. Looking forward to seeing you all in the next module.